stories are remarkably time-free. So if you show an ability, so in that story, that I told, if you look at it generally, I showed some ability to listen and interviewing. I also showed some organizational ability. I showed some people skills, all those kinds of things. No matter when it is that you did them, illustrate something that you are rather than something you did at a particular point. So if you focus on what you are, the stories can come from any part of your career. So maybe it would be a help if I told another story, and I'll ask you again to keep in mind or write down what it is that you know about me from that story. So this is a story from the first month of my career. I had just gotten an M.B.A. and I had signed on to Citicorp and was in a financial control function. I went one day into my manager's office and she said, "Wynn, I'd like you to take over the forecast from Keith." So I said, fine. Keith was a colleague. I went down the hall to Keith's office and I said, "Keith, what's this forecast thing that I'm supposed to take over?" And Keith said, "Let me show you." And this is 1979. So Excel was not on the horizon and even a twinkle in its father or mother's eye. So he brought out a spreadsheet that was 15 columns wide and had 14 products going down the side. And for each one of those intersections, there was amount that was sold each month and a percentage that was sold off each month. It was a loan product for those of you who follow financial products. And I thought to myself, oh my God, this is terrible. I don't do well with these small calculations. I'll never get this done and I'll get fired. And it's only my first month. So I said to Keith, "Why isn't this automated?" And Keith said, "It can't be." So I don't know about you, but when somebody says it can't be, it's a red flag. And I go, let me see what we can do about this. So I went back to Nancy's office and I said, "Nancy," with all the boldness of a newly minted MBA, I said, "I can automate this." And she said, "But John wants it by Friday." This is like Wednesday. So I say, "Let's go talk to John. John's our boss." And I say, "John, I can automate this thing." And he said, "Really? Okay. Can you do it by next Tuesday?" Or Wednesday. And I said, "Sure." And I ended up working more that weekend than I would have liked and putting in overtime on the extra days. I brushed off my college basic and automated the process. So this saved the department a lot of time. The forecast, which previously had been done quarterly because it was so much work, could now be done monthly and even multiple times monthly. And so I was happy because I didn't have to do the calculations. Nancy was happy because she needed to get the forecast done. John was happy, and Rich, the president of the division, was happy. So that's a story from 1979. What did you learn from that story?
I have a question about your story. I noticed you used a lot of direct quotes in telling your story rather than just saying, I talked to them about this. You actually said, "John, what do you do?" And
So when we tell stories, which we all do, the more that we can make it concrete, sometimes I can tell a story and I'll include a sense of touch. And if you include something you hear or something you see or something you touch or feel, you're going to hit more parts of the brain. A lot of people, when asked a question like, how do you approach something? Well, I work with people, I get organized, I all you're hitting there in the brain is the logical center. That's it. You're hitting in one place. When you're telling a story, if you include more sensation, then you're hitting other parts of the brain. And when you tell the overall story with the possibility that you will fail, or with the possibility you're taking on a bigger risk than you ought to, or that you're capable of, that really brings in a lot of parts of the emotional parts of the brain, because there are things called mirror neurons, which is about as much as I can explain about them, which will start to key in, and the person listening begins to respond emotionally the same way as the person telling the story. So if you tell a story where you are taking a risk, or where things may not turn out well, or something like that, then people lean forward and get interested in the story because they get engaged. And that's a much more effective way of reaching your interviewer than just telling them lists. The other thing that we tend to do is just to say results. So I could have said, I created a budget. But if I say created a budget, you're not going to draw any of the conclusions about leadership or anything else that I'm doing. It's only by telling the story that you activate that part of the brain.